Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're going to be checking out an insanely cool spice pick in the Ultra Holiday Cup, and that is TAPU KOKO. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community, so many thanks for the battle submission. TAPU KOKO is an electric and fairy type Pokemon with the moveset of Volt Switch, Dazzling Gleam, and Brave Bird. Its typing does make it kind of a cool core breaker, but it is definitely held back by the lack of a bait move. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and check out TAPU KOKO in action in the Ultra Holiday Cup. Hopping to the first match, leading TAPU KOKO into Shadow Shiny Charizard. Charizard definitely not going to appreciate the Volt Switches. Opponent is going to save switch into Shadow Walrein. Shadow Walrein doesn't like the Volt Switches either. TAPU KOKO fires off the Brave Bird, grabs a shield, and then in comes Virizion. Virizion will be met with Walrein that does have a lot of loaded energy. Walrein fires off the Icicle Spear. Virizion farms up. Unfortunately, Walrein reaches Icicle Spear number 2, so we are going to see a shield from the Virizion. Virizion over farming, trying to leave with enough energy to be able to reach a Stone Edge versus the Charizard. Sacred Sword is going to KO. Back in comes Charizard, and unfortunately Virizion gets taken out. But now you can bring back in that TAPU KOKO, and these Volt Switches are going to tear through the Charizard. Charizard firing off a charge move. Decision time. TAPU KOKO commits the shield. It's the Blast Burn in the back. They have Obstagoon, and Obstagoon is really bad news for the Aurorus in the back. TAPU KOKO takes the Night Slash, one win con, going straight for the Dazzling Gleam. Do they respect the damage? They do not! They get one shot, and in comes Aurorus. Aurorus should be able to close out this game, no problem. Weather Ball gets the shield. Even if they go for the Blast Burn, despite being a Shadow, it's not going to KO. Aurorus tanks it like a champion, reaches the Weather Ball. Weather Ball will be taking care of the Charizard, and that is a good game. Hopping to the next match, picking up another great lead, TAPU KOKO into Pidgeot. Opponent is actually staying in this lead, so they might be weak to TAPU KOKO somewhere in the back. Pidgeot is going to fire off a charge move. Pidgeot goes for the Feather Dance. TAPU KOKO tanks it and continues to farm. Opponent is going to save switch into Alolan Golem, which gets absolutely walled by Virizion. Alolan Golem can pack a punch in this meta, but on the save switch, unfortunately, it just gets absolutely destroyed by Virizion. Opponent is going to be firing off a charge move. They go for the Rock Blast. That just does absolutely nothing. Golem firing off charge move number 2. They go for the Wild Charge. Virizion tanks it, gets the farm down. In the back, there's Charizard baiting with the Sacred Sword, trying to grab the shield, and the opponent commits the shield. That's big. Virizion gets to the Stone Edge. Is the opponent willing to double shield the Charizard here? Stone Edge one-shots the Charizard, and that is a good game. Moving into the next match, leading TAPU KOKO into Giratina. This will depend on Giratina's fast move. Most are running Dragon Breath in this meta, but unfortunately, this one is actually running Shadow Claw. Giratina farms up quite a bit of energy. They fire off the Ancient Power. TAPU KOKO is going to tank it and go straight for the Dazzling Gleam, hoping the opponent lets it go, and they do. Aggressive switch into Aurorus. Opponent will fire off a last-second charge move. It is just the Dragon Claw, but Aurorus did commit the shield. We'll have to see what the opponent has in the back. They send in Alolan Ninetales, so they are incredibly weak to Aurorus. Going for a risky Weather Ball bait here, and the opponent commits the shield. The bait pays off, and now going to full send the Meteor Beam. Are they willing to give up the second shield as well? They are not! They're barely able to survive and reach a last-second charge move. Aurorus is going to let that go. It is just a Weather Ball. In the back, they have Talonflame. Talonflame is going to be met with a Meteor Beam from Aurorus. They have to shield it, or they get one shot. They let it through, and Aurorus clutches the win. Picking up another Charizard lead in the next match. Opponent is going to stay in this matchup. These Volt Switches adding up quite a bit. This is enough for the Blast Burn. TAPU KOKO, not the tankiest ever, is going to respect the Blast Burn. Opponent staying in with Charizard. Charizard able to reach the last second Blast Burn, but loses CMP to TAPU KOKO. TAPU KOKO fires off the Brave Bird. Opponent commits the shield, and TAPU KOKO is going to double shield, saying that if the opponent stayed in, they might be weak to the unique typing of TAPU KOKO. Opponent is going to send in Walrein. We see a pivot into Aurorus, and the opponent is going to send in Obstagoon. So the opponent is double weak to counter in the back, which means that hopefully Virizion with double kick and Sacred Sword should be able to put in a lot of work. Aurorus is going to fire off the Meteor Beam. Meteor Beam connects. Obstagoon is able to farm down. And now you could bring in the Virizion to get ahead on energy here. We'll have to see. And that's exactly what he's going to do. Send in the Virizion. Virizion is going to have to tank this charge move and commit to the farm down. It is just a cross chop, thankfully. Virizion able to get the farm down. In comes Walrein. Walrein is going to win CMP over the Virizion. Icicle Spear is going to land. Virizion returning fire with the Sacred Sword. Sacred Sword will do quite a lot of damage here. Opponent is going to let that through. And I believe TAPU KOKO has a move loaded as well. Banks the Sacred Sword. In comes TAPU KOKO. Dazzling Gleam gets the shield, but if the opponent is able to double up, then unfortunately the opponent will be able to win this. We'll have to see. They fire off the Icicle Spear. Back in comes Virizion. They do not have the back-to-back moves. Virizion will be able to take care of the Walrein and secure the win. Picking up a decent lead in the next match, TAPU KOKO into Walrein. TAPU KOKO, of course, able to hit for super effective damage. Opponent is going to save switch into a Smackdown Chestnut. Definitely a spicier pick. Virizion is going to be firing off a Sacred Sword into the Chestnut. Chestnut is going to tank that damage. Virizion firing off Sacred Sword number 2. Chestnut continuing to farm, trying to reach the back-to-back superpowers. Chestnut is able to fire off charge moves. We'll have to see, did they make it to the back-to-back? First one lands, and they did make it to the back-to-back. So unfortunately, Virizion is going to be forced to commit the shield here from the Chestnut. Opponent will send back in Walrein, and Walrein is going to be met with a lot of energy from Virizion. This Sacred Sword is going to land. Opponent lets that through, but they're not going to let the second Sacred Sword through, as they will fire off an Icicle Spear. Icicle Spear is going to KO, and now you send back in the TAPU KOKO to get ahead on some energy. In comes TAPU KOKO in the back. The opponent has Virizion, and they're actually going straight Sacred Sword here unless they're running Leaf Blade. They are actually running Leaf Blade. Oh my goodness, that is a bit surprising, but this Virizion in the back is looking quite dangerous. Brave Bird would probably kill multiple Virizions, but unfortunately it does get shielded, and Aurorus in the back does not have a good time going up against Virizion. Virizion will be able to reach the Sacred Sword. Sacred Sword hitting for double super effective damage here. Looks like the Virizion might actually be running Leaf Blade and Stone Edge, so maybe there is actually a chance. Aurorus is at the back-to-back moves. Weather Ball gets the shield and able to fire off Weather Ball number 2. Is this going to KO? It barely does not, and that's a good game. Picking up a pretty nice lead in the next match, TAPU KOKO into Obstagoon. TAPU KOKO is of course going to resist all of Obstagoon's standard moveset. Opponent save switches into Virizion, and honestly, Virizion's save switch is a bit of a tricky spot for this team, as unfortunately, there isn't really a hard counter to it. He's going to bring in his own Virizion, but being behind on energy means that unless he goes down shields, he is not going to be able to keep switch here. Sacred Sword is going to land. He is able to win CMP over his opponent, but his opponent has overfarmed here, so they will be able to outpace to the next one. We are going to see this Sacred Sword land. You don't have to shield this one, but you will have to start shielding future ones. So we are going to see farming up quite a bit of energy here, and the opponent is going to strike first with the Sacred Sword, committing the shield. He does have his own Sacred Sword loaded here, continuing to farm, bringing in Aurorus, and getting the snipe, recognizing that since he's going to be losing switch advantage, may as well bring in his Aurorus, take some damage, and save energy on Virizion. Able to reach the Meteor Beam. Meteor Beam connects, and then ends up being a CMP tie. Honestly, that works out pretty nicely. Opponent fires off the cross chop, and they get the farm down. Now, do you go for an aggressive farm down with the TAPU KOKO here? We'll have to see. Gonna send in TAPU KOKO, and it's a Alolan Ninetales in the back. These charms are adding up quite a bit onto the glassy TAPU KOKO. TAPU KOKO is gonna fire off the Brave Bird. Brave Bird gets the shield. In comes Virizion, firing off the Sacred Sword. This is not enough for the Stone Edge. Does the opponent know it? They do not. Oh my goodness. Can TAPU KOKO make it to the Brave Bird? TAPU KOKO is able to get there. Is this enough to KO? TAPU KOKO, barely not enough. Moving into the next match, picking up yet another favorable lead, TAPU KOKO into Dragonite. This electric fairy typing is very useful in the Ultra Holiday meta. The unfortunate thing, however, is TAPU KOKO only being stuck with the nuke moves. In comes a Greedent save switch. Greedent will fire off a Body Slam. TAPU KOKO is going to bank a ton of energy and then send in Virizion. Virizion will be able to tank Body Slams for days, and these Bullet Seeds are basically applying zero fast move pressure. Virizion is going to farm up and is able to win CMP over the Greedent Greedent on the next body slam. Sacred Sword is going to get the Greedent low, and honestly, Virizion may just be able to double kick all the way down here and leave with a nice amount of energy to potentially threaten the Dragonite. Going for the farm down, Greedent, ever spammy, able to reach another body slam. Virizion is going to let that through. In comes the Dragonite, but Dragonite will be met with the loaded Stone Edge. Stone Edge onto Dragonite, gets the shield, aggressive switch back into Tapu Koko, going straight for the Dazzling Gleam. Dazzling Gleam gets shielded as well. Opponent giving up both shields, but they should be able to only hit for resisted here. We'll have to see. They go for the Dragon Claw, commits the shield, wanting to preserve Tapu Koko, and making it to the Brave Bird. Brave Bird onto the Dragonite, is gonna KO. In the back, they have Obstagoon. Obstagoon does get the counter down. Virizion is very low on health. Is Virizion going to be able to reach a Sacred Sword here? Going to send in Aurorus, and Aurorus is going to have to tank this damage. Opponent fires off Obstruct, so they are running Obstruct Obstagoon here, and that is a bit rough, as unfortunately, they've now buffed up their own defense, which means that this Meteor Beam is going to be doing less damage than it typically would. Odds are this is probably another Obstruct. We do see a shield used, and it is another Obstruct. In comes Virizion. Virizion gets to the Sacred Sword, able to withstand the counter damage, take out the Obstagoon, and in the back, there's Greedent. Greedent gets farmed down by Aurorus, and that is a good game. Moving into the next match, we see yet another favorable lead, Tapu Koko into Charizard. Opponent save switches into Chandelure, and honestly, Chandelure is a bit of a scary Pokemon for this team to see. Unfortunately, the opponent ends up getting an entire free Incinerate through, which does make this a bit awkward, as now Chandelure has 100 energy. They fire off the Flame Charge, they're going to farm up, and they're going to fire off Charge Move number 2. Aurorus is going to commit the shield, it is another Flame Charge. Aurorus is going to farm up, and actually bait with a Weather Ball here. Bit of a risky bait. Opponent lets it through, but the opponent is going to get hit with another Weather Ball, and they're going to have to shield if they want to get this energy off. They're actually going to let that go. They're going to send in Charizard. Charizard continuing to farm up. Charizard, and the opponent makes a crazy catch, catching the Meteor Beam onto Obstagoon. But Obstagoon is not going to appreciate the fact that there are 2 Pokemon remaining that have good matchups against it. We see the switch into the Tapu Koko. Tapu Koko able to tank the Night Slash and fire off the Brave Bird. Could have potentially double kicked down with Virizion, as now Virizion into Charizard is a bit of an awkward spot to be in. So maybe saving the Tapu Koko for the Charizard may have been the better way to go, because now Virizion taking double super effective damage is in a bit of a tough spot here. Virizion is going to let it go. Blast Burn connects, and now it's all up to Aurorus, and unfortunately, I just don't think Aurorus is quite going to be able to pull this off. Opponent fires off the Dragon Claw, and they have the back-to-back, so that will be taking care of the Aurorus, and that's a good game. Hopping into the final match, sending Tapu Koko into Giratina. Again, this will depend on the fast move, and they're running Dragon Breath. You absolutely love to see it. Opponent is going to save switch into Shadow Snorlax, banking a ton of energy on Tapu Koko, and going to send in Virizion. These double kicks adding up quite a bit, and so will the Sacred Swords, and Virizion is able to outpace, as it does get to these Sacred Swords every 9 turns, instead of every 12 from Snorlax's Body Slam. Snorlax commits the shield, but Virizion is just too spammy, reaching another Sacred Sword. That's gonna land, and from here, Virizion honestly doesn't have to shield. Virizion is going to be able to tank this, farm down, and still be alive. Back in comes Giratina. Giratina is going to get the farm down. Tapu Koko does have a Dazzling Gleam loaded, or do you bring in Aurorus here? Going to bring in Aurorus in the back. They have Magnezone, and honestly, Magnezone is a bit scary here. One Mirror Shot, of course, will not KO, but it does hit for double super effective damage, so it definitely will add up. Aurorus is going to fire off the Meteor Beam. This will hit for some heavy resisted damage. Opponent is going to let that through, and now Aurorus gets that extra damage. Opponent has a ton of energy here. They're going to be firing off another charge move. They go for the Mirror Shot. That just does so much damage, and it looks like the opponent may have conceded the match there. Meteor Beam lands, and that is a good game. All in all, these were some incredibly fun battles featuring Tapu Koko in the Ultra Holiday Cup. Unfortunately, Tapu Koko is definitely limited by the fact that it doesn't have a good bait move. Its typing does prove to be kind of useful in this meta, but until it gets a consistent bait move, unfortunately, it is going to stay more of a fun pick than a pick for climbing. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is absolutely incredible, so thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.